Hey, happy Wednesday. Welcome to Naked with Dr. Money. I'm Dr. Stephanie Ardrey, your host. Naked with Dr. Money is a weekly vlog where I share a little bit of the behind scenes journey of how I manage my own mind, body, and soul while building a multinational startup wellness organization where I'm promising you an opportunity to nurture and heal your mind, body, and soul. So, how about that? The irony, right? But I've been having a fantastic time these weekly sessions, sharing a little bit of the background. And I've also been having a number of amazing conversations. It's very interesting that more and more of the conversations seem to fall into this recognition that mindset is critical to everything. Um, and the idea of what those things are um, is is really as it relates to not only our physical but also our mental responsibility. I'm sorry, I got a little message there from my guest, and there's a little bit of a glitch with the guest. So let me get the right invitation over to her so that she can jump in. And but anyway, so we had started this whole conversation about mindset. And if it is that mindset was something that is more the result of your nature, or if it's more a result of how you're nurtured, right? So, that's the thing that's very interesting with mindset. And I'd asked a few people early on, so when is it that you think that you first became aware that you had a particular mindset, right? Either that you knew you seemed to form an opinion that may or may, not have gelled with those who were around you. And on a few prior conversations, I shared that I think I first realized that I had an opinion and that I was strong and confident in that opinion when I was about 3. And I remember because I guess it was a critical life experience. And I had the initiative to, kind of say to my mom what the solution needed to be. And in fact, I was going to take the leadership role in initiating that solution. So, uh, it's really interesting when you think about that, now when I think about that, this idea of being that person that, could just, know. And then also noticing how along the journey, when things were encouraged, but also when things were discouraged, there definitely was a level of socialization that said, hey, you need to um, have maybe a little bit less of an opinion. It's a funny thing because women go through this journey sometimes where, depending upon the generational cohort that you find yourself within, the so-called norms of that generation are part of what you are socialized to adopt, right? And those of us who kind of draw outside of the lines, we are reminded of those things, right? Because we don't just easily conform. So that's why I think that there is a strong part of mindset that is about your nature. Um, that's that nature part that says, even though folks are trying to socialize me to do X, there's something else in me that's saying, no, I'm hanging on to my Y. Right. Well, today I have a fantastic guest, Dr. Euvonka Farabee. Is my guest. She's been a good friend. We met when I first, early in my move from the San Francisco Bay Area, Oakland to be exact, to Los Angeles. I was there expanding my business at that time, and we became friends, and our friendship has just continued to grow over, this journey. And I always say that, when you meet someone, you never know if it's a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Only time will tell, right? So you just have to be willing to go along that journey and see where it goes, right? So she has been there in ways that no one else could, and I appreciate her and love her. But so today we're going to have a conversation about, what I'm going to ask her about. So stay tuned. Hey,
Ah, hello, hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I am blessed and so happy to be here with you and so honored and always humbled. You're such an amazing person and you've been consistently amazing. So I'm happy to join you here today.
Oh, you're so sweet. See, that's love. That's love back. It's like back to you, right? It takes one to know one. I was just thinking about how we used to have our brunches, remember?
Oh,
And
yeah,
oh my goodness, I was like, we used to have so many good things. Those were
I know.
right. I've been thinking about some of those conversations over a meal.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what I've been doing with Naked with Dr. Money, as I shared, is someone had asked me, and I also thought about just the journey of creating this global wellness company where, I'm saying, hey, if you want to live your full life, and full life is 120 years and beyond, then you need to holistically make sure that you're taking care of your mind, body, and soul,
Yes.
and then sort of having found myself in a situation where I could put to test some of my, thoughts about how that process can happen and
Mhm.
can happen in a sustainable way.
Yeah.
Um, can become a lifestyle that is manageable while you're doing all of those other things in life. So mindset is so critical to all of that. So today's conversation, so I've been talking, kind of taking people behind the scenes on, so how do I manage my mind, body, and soul? And this conversation is sort of around the mindset part of that perspective.
Yeah.
So I've been talking about mindset, motivations, and manifestations, but also in this context of, do you think that mindset is a result of your nature or is it nurtured?
Mm, yeah. Well, thanks again for having me on. And it's a very important question and an interesting question because there's a ways to deal with both, because I believe it's both. I believe that we are born coming into this earth with a natural proclivity to either see the world half empty, the glass half empty or half full. It's just easier for some people to be on the right side of sunshine, and where other people are like, it's the end of the world, right? So but even with that, it's important to understand yourself. One, so that you're not so hard on yourself. People are just we need both of those type of personalities for a variety of reasons. Particularly when you're working together in business, whether you're in partnership, you need someone to be that is somewhat the voice of reason. And then the person who also is willing to step on the gas and let's go. So I can use myself for an example. I'm a person, I want to go. I want to, step on the gas, but I have made a multitude of mistakes because what I don't really care to do or like to do, that I have to force myself to do, is to research. And I don't want to do that part. I just want to get on with the business. I just want to get on with the whatever we're doing. And because if you don't do your due diligence in life for things, not only can you get taken advantage of, uh, and on a variety of scales, but you really don't have an understanding, really your end game and your end result. You're missing so many pieces of it. So when you have people in your life that are sometimes like, hey, this thing can fail, this thing, you want to limit that in your life, but at the same time, what I even teach in my coaching practice when I coach uh, people is that there is some wisdom in fear. So, well, yes, we need to press through our fears, but we need to be able to tease out what is a true fear that is a legitimate concern that can be handled with strategy versus boogeyman stuff. that people can't manage. You can't manage, you know, irrational things. But if your fear is, say, for instance, you're going to move forward in life and say, I want to start this business, but what if I lose my money? What if people don't support me? Okay, let's look at that. You know, what if you lose your money? So what are the things that are in place that would say you might lose your money? So what strategy can you employ, to mitigate that? Is it, and in doing those things, you find out a lot about yourself. You have to take those steps, and then everything else is about mindset, and that's the part that is the nurture part. If you grew up in a family such as myself, who they didn't like, my parents didn't like taking chances on anything, and so the sure thing for their generation was to get a job, stay there 40 years, get your pension, and suck up whatever comes along with that so that you can make it to the end of the road. And our life is not like that anymore. Our society is not like that. Our work climate is not like that. And so it requires that we have a fortitude to be able to move forward in purpose. And that requires, excuse me, it's Wild Kingdom in my office for some reason. And that requires that there be a mindset that's willing to, after you do all that you can, to step forward. And that's what we have to face, the things inside that say, why am I still afraid to do this? I have researched this and did my, we've talked about this ad nauseum. I can't mention it. I'm sick of hearing myself. I have my business plans, but I'm still like, you know that is the part of the nurture that I think that you're asking about. That, so you have to look and see how things that you've gone through, so, suffering chronic disappointment, even abuses, unprocessed pain, and not dealing with those issues can stop you in your mindset from being able to do what it is that you're called to do.
So it's very interesting. And I think that at different stages of uh, one's journey,
Hmm.
if they continue on the journey, they come to different points of awareness.
Yeah.
And when I think about that, though, there are critical forks in the road.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is an interpretation, I think, that can influence or misdirect one. I'm saying in the sense of there are certain manifestations that have happened that now, with a little bit of hindsight, when I look back, I sort of have another lens or perspective that says, wow, if I understood that in essence my relationship with the Almighty and the ancestors was such that every time I've said that I have a desire to do X, and if that desire to do X is good, and from that place, right, then I know that that was probably a purpose or an assignment or something like that. What I didn't get until recently is that the desire to do that is granted.
Yeah.
It's like, so now go do it. I think a lot of times people believe that they've prayed or whatever, they've meditated or whatever, they've set an intention for something that they'd like to see manifest. And then they just sit there.
That's been the biggest, and a lot of that, if I may say, comes from unbalanced teaching,
Hmm.
um,
Unbalanced, what type of teaching?
a biblical teaching,
Okay.
because
All
the Bible's very clear that faith without works is dead. It's very
right.
clear.
Okay.
It's very clear. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be open. What you have to seek, you
Those are
have to
action
knock.
action words.
Yes. And part of even when it's been taught in a balanced way,
Yeah.
people have not dealt with the fear. So it's easier to say, I'm going to put this on God, and I'm gonna wait on Him, and then this is going to happen. And the truth of the matter is that God works through you.
Yeah.
God works through people.
Mhm.
So, you know, when you the motion, you have to be in motion, and even the fear of not getting everything right, because and I'm a minister of the gospel. I believe that God will meet you at your point of greatest need, but you have to meet Him, and He knows in our humanity we're not going to get everything right, because I think what holds a lot of people back also is the fear of not getting everything perfect, so that
But
the
who said
outcome.
that? Who created that expectation?
I
I
honestly,
honestly, I think, it's so that's presumes to me then
yeah.
that if that was a requirement, then why is it that babies don't pop out of the womb full grown?
Right.
Just kind
Right.
of saying, right? It's like,
Yeah.
no, you were supposed to go through a process of
Hmm.
trial and error because you're building things. You're building balance. Your brain is developing. Your bones are, you're going through a process,
But I will
growth,
say,
evolution.
yeah, but I will say, fear is a big component. That
Oh,
is what will have people not take personal responsibility. So,
but
so
what
it's,
is
it's
here, Euvonka?
so it's
Because
God's
me,
fault and it's somebody else's fault, and it's until you say, okay, what's going on here?
yeah. So
Hmm.
fear is these made up excuses because I've had points where I've had to say to my son, don't empower no excuses when you're
Yeah.
talking to me. I'm not trying to hear it. I'm
You
not
never
trying
did give him a break. You wouldn't even let him win at checkers. You know, wouldn't even let him win the board game. I'm like, he's 7. You know,
he's born tough. That's why his butt is so smart
I
now.
know.
It's like, okay, yes,
Right.
use your brain. And that's why he's definitely a chauvinist.
But
A little
it's true. The fear, false evidence appearing real.
yeah,
Forget everything and run.
yeah.
So
Okay.
I'd like to change that to face everything and rise. So how
Okay.
do we face everything and rise?
Right.
Hmm.
Right. Well, I think it was really interesting. Part of the things that I miss so much about my mom is that we used to have these great conversations. And so I was one time we were having this conversation, kind of creating this, in a sense, working analogy around what is being connected to source all about.
Hmm.
And she was saying, or I don't know if she was saying or I was saying, but the interpretation was, imagine buying a television set and bringing it home. When you purchase the TV, it has everything that it needs to work. But if it's not plugged into a source, it's not going to work.
Hmm.
Right. And so the analogy of faith and fear was sort of, if it is that television is plugged in, then you're relying on your faith. But if
Hmm.
somebody runs across and trips that cord and pulls it loose, then now you're allowing your fear to dominate
Hmm.
because they don't coexist, or like they're oil and water. And so kind of with that always running in my mind, that I think caused me to spend the minimal amount of time on the fear bucket,
Hmm.
because for me it's like, well, I've tripped my faith, so I got to get back to my faith because I know that being connected to my source
Hmm.
is going to ultimately allow me to move beyond this particular point. What is the lesson? What is the experience? But I also think that it is really that, is when I understood that I love to learn,
Hmm.
and I've always loved to learn,
Yeah.
then everything is a learning experience. And so, because everything is a learning experience, I really don't have a lot of time invested in what is, what somebody else may call failure or, you know what I mean, or fear. I just don't spend a lot of time there because it just is not something that I think I should have any energy towards. I don't have any reason to. So it's just shrunk to such a degree that it's, sure, it can creep up from a new, unfamiliar place experience. I'm going into a new environment. But even this last couple of years, just with the depth that I've become familiar with, I just say my experiences in Jamaica, like I've definitely grown in ways that I wasn't sure that I could go to a country by myself and know that, I can
Yeah.
get there, rent a car, and keep it pushing.
Well, you know, it's interesting because if I think about you, I would have no doubt. I'm like, you really? You know, you didn't think you could do that? I'm like, and the reason I say that, we're making light, but ever since I've known you, one, you do have an attitude. It's like, okay, let's look at the glass half full. How can we attack this? And that sounds super simple, but it's not simple. There's a price that you pay. You've always paid the price, and when it comes to wanting and desiring something out of life, you have to be willing to sacrifice. And a lot of the hesitancy comes from either not understanding the level of sacrifice, or when it's understood, not wanting to make the sacrifice.
Mm.
But one of the things that you've always done is you've always been willing to take, let's scratch this and we're going to rebuild that, because this is the direction I'm going now. That means this is over. I've learned from that. I'm going to take what I've learned, and now we're building this new masterpiece.
Mhm.
So, but that's, I said that like A, B, C, but it's not that required. Okay, if I'm going to do that, that means, you know, my income, am I going to sacrifice some things now? Now I might have to live differently.
Mhm.
Now I might have to drive differently. Now
Mhm.
I'm going to have to give up, some things because my resources personally and financially are going to have to go in a different direction. And that
Mhm.
requires also not only the personal sacrifice of that, but also not caring what people have to say around you, because that's also an inhibiting factor I found for people. What is my family going to say? I've experienced that.
Mm.
What are my friends going to say? You
Yeah.
know, now that I can't, do whatever. I remember when I had to close my business, my insurance agency, and I was doing, terribly, financially. It took my family like 2 years to really believe that I didn't have the money that I used to have. So no, I'm not going to fly, to so and so's birthday party. What do you mean you're not going to be there? Hello, I just closed my business, or I'm about to close my business. So
Right.
there are sacrifices that are made on socially, financially, spiritually. I mean, there's so much that a person goes through that when someone thinks about it and they count the cost, they're like, you know what? Let me just stay over here and do what I've been doing it because I'm better off with the devil that I know.
Mhm. And that's an interesting thing, and that's why I say it really is all about the decisions you make as you hit a particular fork in the road, whatever that fork in the road, whether it be, disaster, divorce,
Yeah, been
disappointment,
there. Been there.
all of these different things that happen, right? And when you find yourself facing them head
Yeah,
on, what do you do? What do you do? And what I realized is that over the years, I spent as much time investing and working on mindset
yeah,
as I did becoming an expert in the areas that I chose for my, various iterations of my career development. Now I recognize, it was amazing because literally it was October 2020 that it was like by November or December of 2020, I felt like I had really perfect vision in hindsight.
hmm
And
hmm
I could see how each of the steps, even as challenging as they were, even right now, this whole wellness company is inspired by my love of my mother and in her honor and in her early teachings
yeah,
and commitment and her desire for a healthier lifestyle, but her failure, to have died so young, right? That was not her intention, but she
yeah,
did. She perished. And so if I can, and I feel like that because of that, and then of my dad dying young as well, that in essence, that was so that I would have had plenty of time to heal before my peer group, because now my peers are losing their family members.
yeah.
Now they're looking for tools and resources and guidance. And now I've healed and healed enough to have created a methodology of
hmm
how to heal from these different things, right? And it begins first with self love. And that's where it all begins. And you can't really get deep into self-love until your mindset is in order.
You cannot go anywhere your mind has not taken you first.
Yeah.
So if your mind is not able to take you, where you need to go so that things can even transfer from your heart and develop into action, you have to work on your mindset. But that can be a very painful thing, a very painful thing, and it requires humility. It'll humble you. It is
Mhm,
not easy to say, I haven't done this because I'm affected in this way, or my self esteem is low. Who wants to say that? So
mhm,
you have to be willing to face yourself
mhm,
and do the things that are necessary to change it around, because it requires some intention and it requires work.
mhm.
And I thinking about you and your mother, and she was so young when she passed away, and you were a young woman. But I think about so much that she had imparted in you. She imparted a lifetime of things in you that had stabilized you and developed you to a point where you were already walking out, purpose in a large degree, even in her passing. And you were in your you were in your early 20s, and it started even before that. So intention is so important. And I believe that when you're intentional about your life, when you really work on yourself, your fears, your mindset, you can move forward and develop and achieve things that you couldn't even probably imagine yourself doing before. When you look at your life, you
Mhm.
know, and you see, how far you've come, what you've actually done. Um, it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing, and your family and everybody that's in your sphere of influence will only benefit.
Yeah, I think that was interesting. I thought about that. I was trying to explain what was different, when I graduated recently from law school. And I said it was something different about that. Like this was something, the doctorate of business was one thing, but the law degree landed real different because it really was me giving myself a gift for myself that
Yeah,
I didn't have to commit that I was willing to practice if I decided that I didn't want to, because I'm not sure, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, I'm
but
just
you,
not,
but you wanted to do that. When I first met you, you
it
said you
was
were going to law school.
exactly,
I
exactly.
think I think that was in the conversation when I met you,
Yeah.
at that place. It's like, I'm eventually going to law school, but not yet. And you always had law books, and you always, always, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
and it's just because I love deals and I love structuring and understanding, and so there were just it's like even with, my various legal teams, there are always kind of little gaps, and so I just wanted to have a better ability to even because I said I made some decisions. I'm going to build a global company. That means there's going to be multiple jurisdictions. I'm going to always have a whole bench of a bunch of different legal teams. I just want to be better proficient at how I'm able to direct their efforts. Now I understand why there were so many business gaps too, because I see now, having gone through law school, where the business part is not incorporated in the teaching, which I think is such a waste of time because you could just as easily give them a real business scenario with the legal scenario as you can with the wrong one. Like the reason you would use improper practices is just, I guess, just arrogance,
Hmm.
because there's just no other reason, in terms of why that would be the way you would so-called teach.
Yeah.
You demonstrate by looking at realistic situations. And I guess that's what they're saying you're supposed to do by reading the cases. But if that is not necessarily consistent with what the professor is focused on in their lecture or their experience, then you experience a disconnect. And
Hmm.
so you never fully get, full on. And that's why I said for me, it was sort of the experience was like, I never joined a sorority. But if I had, I understood that, the hazing, it seemed like law school was another level of hazing. And if you manage to make it through the hazing, then you get to go pay for a course to study for the next 4 months to learn what you really need to know to pass the bar. It's like, forget the fact that you just spent 3 years and all this money to so called, go to law school.
Yeah.
Why? Just to mentally, because basically they're trying to break you down. It's almost like, um, I guess that's what boot camp is for the military. I guess every,
Physicians training, they go through that too. That's what the
yeah,
residency happened when they're prepared for the boards. It's
right,
brutal to watch.
yeah, yeah. So it's, so it's, that there's something to it, that this
Hmm.
was really a battle of wits.
Hmm.
And then one of my guests at the graduation said, she was sitting back in the audience, and when she looked at the stage of, the trustees, the professors, the administration, she looked at the audience of the students, and uh, of African descent, there was one guy, an African guy, and maybe there were 4 or 5 of us. I think I might be stretching it,
Hmm. Hmm.
but you know that's our population, right?
Hmm.
And so one of my guests said, she said, "It's amazing you finished."
Yeah.
And I said, "But it was about that intention."
Hmm.
Because what I found is that a friend of several friends have been holding space, holding an intention. And so that's when I really started thinking about, wow, how powerful mindset is, and
Yeah.
especially how important who you have in your inner circle, and the conversations, the spaces that you hold with folks within those inner circles, how that influences your ability to take your mindset and translate that into a motivation to take action. And then from there, to see those things manifest in your life.
Hmm. Hmm.
So before I let you go, tell me about some of the coaching work you're doing, and also how people can get in contact with you.
Awesome. So I do individual as well as group coaching. I have a course that I periodically run called uh, Rise Up, It's Time to Rewrite Your Life Story, where we take 12 weeks. And that's a course for women to work on a major uh, accomplishment that you want to achieve. And we first deal with mindset in
Mhm.
regards to it. And then we literally rewrite uh, a situation to go in the trajectory that that person would like to go. And then we come up and establish plans that have goals and dates for some significant period of time that will determine. But that's done in a group setting. I do individual coaching as well. And then I also am uh, starting a mentorship group that's by monthly subscription. And that is for people who are not necessarily ready to spend the 12 weeks, but they know that they need something, throughout the weeks coming along. And so the mailing list that you can sign up just to be on my mailing list and to get more information is www.liveshacklefree.com, LIVEShackleFree.com, or you can send me an email at info@liveshacklefree.com.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, we definitely are going to continue the conversation, and then I'll have to get you out to one of the resorts so you can do a wellness week
Yes.
with us. So stay tuned. A lot of exciting activities are coming soon. So thanks again, Euvonka, for joining me today. And
Thank you.
I look forward to, like I said, continuing the conversation.
Absolutely. And I love you dearly. Thank you so much.
All right. Smooches.
Mm.
Bye.
Bye bye.
So, everyone, again, thank you for joining me this week for Naked with Dr. Money. As I mentioned, we're going to be hitting the road, going on tour, coming to a city near you. To learn more about that, you can check out my website at www.420wellnessjamaica.com. And that's where you'll get that information. But also, tune in again next Wednesday at noon. I go live with another episode of Naked with Dr. Money. And wonder who the guest is for next week. Anyway, I'll have to post that information shortly. But in the interim, be well, stay focused, There's nothing wrong with understanding that in order to be the best you, you must take care of you. So start with you, start with self-love, start with healing and healing through forgiveness. And I will see you next week. Take care.